Give us 60 minutes and we'll give you Nelson Radio every Saturday from 2 to 3 p.m. on KTLK AM 1150. With 29 years in the mortgage business and an array of top-level guests visiting the show, Nelson is in a unique position to bring you cutting-edge information on real estate, business, finance, and law. If you have any questions for Nelson or any of his guests, give him a call at 888-888-2136. That's 888-888-2136. Or check him out online at nelsonradio.com.
Nelson Radio.
Welcome back to Nelson Radio right here on KTLK AM 1150. This segment brought to you by Academy Mortgage, the home of our exclusive lock and shop rate guarantee. And Brett, as you know, in real estate, people are scared about rising interest rates. Here's an answer. You freeze the interest rate, go out and identify the property that you want to point it to, and it's waiting for you at the finish line. It's a great mechanism.
It's a great mechanism, and I wish that I could communicate that to some of our clients, that you don't necessarily have to be ready to pull the trigger to lock down a property that you're in love with, and it's a great way to approach it.
Exactly. If you want to learn more, you can call us direct. You should call us direct. 888-888-2136. That's 888-888-2136, or you can click through at nelsonradio.com. And if you're a buyer, we have another gateway to get a hold of us. If you're out there driving, can't take these notes down, simply type or text the letters BUYER, B-U-Y-E-R, to 313131, and we'll be able to get right back to you and help you along with your home purchase.
But don't text while you're driving.
There you have it.
All right.
So I want to welcome into the program a dynamic motivator, a dynamic life coach, a fellow by the name of Jairek Robbins. Jairek, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So we've been talking about really two things that we see in all walks of life, whether it's in Brett's world on the gridiron or now in the real estate profession, my world in finance and coming out of professional tennis, in your world of helping to shape and steer people's lives, the issue of motivation and agitation. And I just wanted to tee that up, ask you a little bit about that in terms of the at the 10,000-foot level. How do you motivate and how do you spur on activity?
Well, from my point of view, I get to work with a handful of different people. Rarely I get to work with athletes, and I've gotten to work with a few Olympic teams as well as some MLB people over in Tampa. And in working with different people as far as sports is concerned, it's the same thing at working with someone at a Goldman Sachs or a stock trader or a solo entrepreneur or a salesperson. It's really understanding the dynamics of psychology that exists between, the motivation or the desperation, the inspiration and excitement to move towards something, or the fear, the anxiety, or the pain that might occur to move away from something. And really understanding the dynamics of the human mind and getting in there and figuring out, what is this unique individual moved the most by? Are they moved the most by the possibility that's standing in front of them out there in the world and what can happen if they take action and make it work? Or are they more motivated, they're more inspired to action from the pain that's going to occur if they don't take action? The failure or the upset or the public humiliation almost of what's going to occur if you don't really step up and deliver your promise you made to your teammates, to your friends, to your business, to your family. And everyone takes their own really unique mix of those two dynamics at the highest level from 10,000 feet up. So it's really learning how do you get into someone's head and figure out what their specific mix is that's going to cause them to move and play at the highest level.
Brett, did you see that in the NFL? I know in the world of tennis, there was really two major groups. Coaches either came at you or they came alongside you. I responded better to somebody that would shoulder up next to me and say, hey, let's do this or do that. Let's think about these things, as opposed to somebody that's, launching on me because they had authority.
Yeah, I really experienced that a lot. I was very blessed to have a great college coach, Hayden Fry. I don't know, Jairek, if you're familiar with that name, but he was a great motivator, and he motivated individuals differently, and he was able to figure out what motivated people, in-your-face motivation or shoulder-to-shoulder motivation. And then, as I progressed up the ladder in my athletic career, the ability for a coach to motivate became dwindled or lessened, because you're so self-motivated at that level that somebody coming up and yelling at me, at least, is the way I looked at it. It's like, well, you can come yell at me and try and motivate me out of fear when you can do my job better than I can, and obviously you can't at the level. So, I think to be a great motivator, you have to be able to read people and use different techniques for different personalities.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Jairek does. Jairek, talk about the power of praise.
Absolutely. It's something, and I was just going to chime back into that, reading people differently. There's different types of coaches I've seen, and, some that lead with a stick, some that lead with their heart. And it's fascinating. Everyone from a Coach Wooden, who is up here in L.A., and he had very specific ways he guided all of his players through. So there was a structure, there was a system. He brought everyone through the same system.
Some shape and form.
Yeah. And he also had very unique ways to reach out to everyone. And it was fascinating because if you listen to player by player by player, they all had their moment where even though he had a very specific structure he was walking them through, they had a moment where they got pulled aside for some reason or talked to for some reason, good or bad, that caused them uniquely to have to respond to that specific situation. It's beautiful.
But I think, Jared, that you have an even higher hurdle to jump across than these coaches, because certainly Coach Wooden was phenomenal. Hayden Fry was phenomenal, but they had the luxury of recruiting people that were designed and were tailored for the system they had in place. You, on the other hand, have to face everybody with a different system in place, and you can't screen them. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Actually, I do screen them. I didn't in the beginning.
Okay.
Which was one of the biggest lessons of my career. And it's something I've learned when you're dealing with clients in any field, in any type of industry you work with. There's two routes. One is take everyone you possibly can and jam them into your model. Two is get very specific on who you want to work with and how you want to work with them, and go out there and headhunt and find the people who best fit your style. As far as life coach, development coach, results coach out there, there's too many people that try to say, I can do everything for everyone. And nowadays, it becomes very well known on the internet that if you don't deliver, people will talk. So it comes down to knowing your style, knowing who you best work with, knowing the personality types, the industry, the style, and really going after those specific people to work with them, because that's where you can deliver the best gifts and results.
I love that, Jairek. Jairek Robbins, the Jairek Robbins Company's life performance coach. You can reach us direct, 888-888-2136. Jairek, I want you to stay with us. We're going to come back and we're going to go deep on Brett Miller, see if you take him on or not. 888-888-2136 or at nelsonradio.com. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Nelson Radio. This segment brought to you by Academy Mortgage.
Welcome back to Nelson Radio, one of the most dynamic shows on business, finance, real estate, and law. Heard right here on KTLK AM 1150. We're continuing our conversations with Jairek Robbins, life coach, performance coach. I'm with NFL phenom Brett Miller. You get a lineman and a tennis player in one room. Brawn and beauty. You can reach us direct.
That's okay. You got a great personality.
Yeah. You can reach us direct. I want you to call. Get this information. It'll help you in business. It'll help you in the boardroom. It'll help you out on the gridiron. It'll help you on the tennis court. 888-888-2136. That's 888-888-2136, or click through at nelsonradio.com. Jairek, thanks for staying with us.
Of course.
So you were talking before we went into the break about the different ways to motivate people, and Brett so keenly cited that that's what defines a good coach, whether it's in business or out on the competitive field, someone that can draft their style specific to how that performer needs to hear the message. And I just wanted to ask you some of those examples, what you've seen. How do you motivate a business person, as an example?
There's a big dynamic that goes on in any human being's mind. There's certain personality types I always look for. And the simple thing is, is the person someone that's interested in the specific or the broad vision? Are they someone who moves towards something, or are they someone who moves away from something? And I know everyone listening has at least one friend that no matter what you say, it could be the most amazing thing in the world, the most positive, nicest, greatest compliment ever, and their nature is to go against it. Meaning you say blue, they say black. You say red, they say orange. It's like no matter what you say, they're an opposite. Versus some people, you say black, they say black. They're with you. So it's understanding the personality traits. Are they moving towards or away from person? Do they want to move towards the results or away from the pain? Are they a big picture or a small detail person? Are they someone who match you or mismatch you? And when you start to understand these things, and I can even send over something you guys can post on the website for people to grab as far as a walkthrough of those different types. Once you understand those dynamics of a personality, you can jump right in and cause the person to react the way you want them to react. If you know they're a mismatcher, you say the opposite. I mean, it sounds childish, but you say the opposite and let them make the decision to do the thing you wanted them to do.
It's interesting because that kind of identity, there was a tennis coach, coached for Yale, Glenn Michabata, Canadian player, was #1 in the world in doubles, a very accomplished athlete. And we used to talk about his frustration in recruiting and how difficult it was recruiting good tennis players that were smart. And he actually shifted that paradigm of, I'm no longer doing that. Now I'm recruiting smart people that can play the game of tennis.
And turning them into good tennis players.
Right, exactly. And I think that's just having that identity of who you're working with. You mentioned, Jairek, that you understand who is your best fit, somebody that brings out your highest and best as you're coaching that performance. What's that look like?
For us, the way we found that is by surveying our best clients. So in the beginning, we didn't know who our favorite clients were. Obviously, we started a business like everyone else, and we built from the ground up. And what we did is every single year, I forget which book I read it in, but someone, I'm trying to think of Michael Gerber maybe. It was one of the business leaders. And I read in a book that said, 80% of your success will come from 20% of your clients. 80% of your problems will come from 20% of your clients. And they said, find those problem child clients once a year and fire them. And what we did is we kept identifying who are our biggest headache, meaning the biggest strain on the business, the biggest problems that show up consistently, the biggest frustration, the biggest complainers, and how do we slowly weed them out of our system because they're not the people that we can deliver the best for, or they'd be enjoying it.
Brett's mouthing the words to me, you're fired. What do I do with that?
That's what Trump says. You're fired.
So that natural kind of cleansing, though, you think that's healthy?
I think it's so healthy. Even if you have a sales team, so that's externally with your clients. Now, if you turn that internally, it's funny you said you're fired, but that internally on your own team. If you've got 10, 20, 30 people you're working with in your office, what's the 20% of the team that doesn't deliver? And how do you transition those people out every year and replace them? That way you're constantly working with a hungry group of individuals that are truly, truly delivering the best in that capacity that they can. Whether it's a sports team, a sales team, a legal office, whoever, if you measure that consistently and give them feedback on how they can improve, you'll naturally weed out the people who don't perform best in this specific scenario and make space for people who will.
But let me ask you this. Does the group of people you're dealing with realize that you're aiming towards that 20% that aren't performing? Is there any fear factor in your operational method?
So we talked about motivation or agitation. This leads to some motivation. I always make sure that whenever you're dealing with a team like that, you always voice it up front. It's not a surprise factor. It's not a, hey, we do this at the end of the year and surprise you 2 months before the results come out. No. From the beginning. When you bring people onto the team, let them know. That's how it runs. Yeah,
that's what it was like in the NFL and training camp. From the day you got there, they let you know you were on camera 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we are evaluating you constantly.
You're listening to Nelson Radio. That's Brett Miller, Peninsula Sotheby's realtor extraordinaire, former NFL lineman, and Nelson Radio. You can contact us at 888-888-2136. That's 888-888-2136 or at nelsonradio.com. Brett, did you find that as you played for different franchises, it actually elevated? Because you would think the natural thing to think from the sidelines is, you're cut. And it's a negative, but did it actually build your performance?
Well, that's a common thing that coaches use to try and motivate you. If you get traded or you ask to be traded or you move to a different team, that's the beginning of the decline of your career. But that is not the case. And what it actually did for me was keep things fresh. And I don't know if you saw Peyton Manning interviewed the other night, but they asked him what it was like to come to the Broncos in a new system after his neck had been fixed. So he was in a physical, a tough situation physically, and he was in a new system. And he said, it actually refreshed him with the game. It gives him something every day to motivate him to get better so you don't get caught in the same old rut. Because if you're in the same system for 6 or 7 years as a professional football player, there's really nothing new in training camp. And when they install the game plan, you could go to sleep after the first couple of years. So, yeah, I think it helped me. It gives you a better perspective. And there was a reason that I wanted out of those teams. And you want to be happy.
Yeah. Jairek, let me ask you, let's switch over to the boardroom. Obviously, the primary focus that we look at is what's taking place in the real estate world. There's a lot of fear and trepidation coming out of the Great Recession. Do you draft off of that emotion, or do you try and deny that emotion as we're in the new normal and a new business cycle?
So what's fun is reality is reality.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who try to act like, no, this was awesome, this was amazing. It's like, hey, if your industry takes a hit, it takes a hit. That's natural. If you break your ankle, you break your ankle. It is what it is.
Easy on the break your ankles.
what you're going to do with it from that point forward is completely up to you.
Brett's mouthing the words, I'm going to break your ankle now. This is a very threatening interview.
No, I don't want any more broken ankles.
And that's the interesting part. So coming out of a recession, people have to look for role models. They have to figure out, where in history has this done before? We've been through plenty of recessions as a country and as a world, as a planet, and as many, many, many industries have. So if you look to other industries who've gone through recessions like this, who are the leaders that emerged, not only came back to where they were, but came back and then immediately excelled far past where they had ever been prior. And if you start to pay attention and figure out, what in the world did they do to get that market share? What in the world did they do preparation-wise so that when it came back slowly, they exploded? And I forget the exact numbers, but I know one of the Kennedys, when everything fell apart, he started off, I think, with $10-20 million, and by the end of the recession,
that would be really tough.
Super tough. But by the end of the recession, he turned it into $200 million. And based on the fact that he paid attention, this was the recession way back when, the Great Depression. But in following those kind of cycles, figuring out what caused that, how in the world, when everything was seemingly falling apart, did that person stand tall and make it through?
Jairek, I can see how
stories like that.
I can see how you're a life coach. I'm sitting forward, pawn at the ground, ready for the gates to open and run. You are a motivator. I love it. Thanks for being with us. That's Jairek Robbins from the Jairek Robbins Company, life coach, performance coach, a results coach. You can reach us to find out more. 888-888-2136, 888-888-2136, or at nelsonradio.com. Jairek, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be right back.
You're listening to Nelson Radio. This segment brought to you by Academy Mortgage. Nelson is a licensed lender under the California Department of Corporations, NMLS 331060.
This is Nelson from Nelson Radio, and it's important that we talk about a very serious issue. We had bad lending practices that led to the mortgage meltdown, but now we've got the challenge of deplorable customer service coming out of the meltdown. Bottom line, getting a new loan can be like pulling teeth without Novocaine. I've got the solution. Academy Mortgage and my team are injecting into the industry real performance and real accountability. Here are the facts. Appraisals in less than a week. Rate guarantees that can improve if the market goes down. Purchase transactions with our market-exclusive close-on-time guarantees and refinance transactions in as little as 30 days. Who would have thunk? Guaranteed rates and guaranteed performance from your mortgage lender. Call me, Nelson, an accountable loan expert for nearly 3 decades, direct at 888-888-2136. That's Nelson at 888-888-2136, 888-888-2136, or at strongcreditrewards.com.